Hello and welcome back to the 100 Jobs Project. I'm your host, Katie, and our guest today is Amber. She's a fifth grade and English language arts teacher at a Title I school in Maryland, and I'm so excited to chat with her. If you're new here, this is a place where I'm interviewing 100 women about what they do for work and how it fits into their day-to-day life. And so we're talking teaching today. Welcome, Amber. So excited to have you.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
And we were just chatting before we started. Right now is spring break for Amber. So I personally am like extra grateful to use precious time off hours to chat. But it sounds like you have some fun stuff planned, a little bit of beach time, a little bit of New York,
Yeah, some city and then, go detox at the beach. It's been nice, honestly, to have a couple days off.
and then back to teaching. Yes, yes. How big is your class size?
So we at the school I teach at are departmentalized. So I'm the English language arts teacher,
Okay.
have a math teacher, and then we have a science, social studies, and health teacher. So I actually get to teach all of the fifth graders at my school, which I think is so fun. I love getting to know all the kids. I have 65 students total. So
Okay.
I have like 20 to 25 in each class.
Okay. Very cool. Definitely have your hands full with that. But
Yeah.
that's also not like, I don't know, I've heard of like 30 plus class sizes here and there, and that just
Mhm.
sounds absolutely insane. So
Yeah,
glad you're not there, but like you still got some classroom management.
for sure. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, before we get too much into your job, always got to get to know you a little bit. First up on my list today, I would love to know, are you more of an early bird or are you like a night owl?
Unfortunately, both. I love to stay up late. I love to stay up late reading specifically,
hmm
but I feel most productive in the morning if I can get an early start and get some things done.
I feel that in my bones. Are you a
Yeah.
Kindle reader? Are you an audiobook gal? Are you like a physical book
Yeah, I
reader? Okay.
love physical books, but I also have just been reading a lot. Like I have Libby on my phone, so I've just been
hmm
tapping a lot on my phone lately
Nothing like a small screen to
to
really
really
keep you up at
strain
night.
your eyes and make you tired.
Truly. No, that is really fun. Do you have a genre of choice or are you kind of all up the map?
Kind of all over the place lately. I've been loving fantasy. I don't know, I'll read anything, honestly.
Yeah, fantasy is one genre that I feel like I stayed away from for a long time as an adult. And now that like a few fantasy series have been coming out and getting a lot of hype, I've like
Mhm.
started dabbling back into it and it's fun. It is like a really great brain escape. And I feel like it somehow just like resets and resettles my brain in a way that I need every now and then.
I agree, honestly, it's a nice way to, like, get out. I also feel like I'm a little picky about my fantasy, like, there's some things that I'm like, "That doesn't interest me," or, like, "That's too unrealistic for me to get into."
Definitely. And I feel like with fantasy, I can only do like small bits here and there. I
Mm,
will give you a recommendation of a book I just read now that like we're in the seasons are changing. It's starting to become springy. I'm feeling like I want more like cute beach reads here and there.
yes,
I don't think it's like a super new book, but I want to say it's called One and Only.
okay.
I'm forgetting the author, but it was a Jenna's book club pick. But if you're heading to the beach and need something else to read, that
Yeah,
one was cute and a little romantic and summery.
to look it up. I do love a beach read. I love we call them brain candy. That's what
hmm
my best friend and I call them, so I love a brain candy book, just like a romance. I know there's gonna be a happy ending. I don't have to stress about it, so
Amazing. I'm going to steal that. Brain candy. That's so cute.
yeah.
We could talk about books all day, but I guess we were just talking about Kindle versus physical versus on your phone. When it comes to planning and doing all of your scheduling, do you prefer a digital calendar or a physical paper?
When I first started teaching, I loved having a physical planner. Like, there's just something about like writing it down, having different colors, but for like convenience sake, and especially like going year to year or like being able to make changes more easily, I have definitely shifted over to like using digital. So, all of my lesson planning, I do like on a Google Doc and like Google Slides that I have formatted out. And that way it's just easier to like adjust things year to year, but also like make changes throughout the week or from my initial planning when I need to.
I would not really have thought about planning lessons and stuff pre-internet. My
Mhm.
mind was just blown there because that does sound like so much organization. One of my grandmothers was a school teacher for a long time, and I guess, yeah, I need to call her up because that sounds so tough. I can
Yeah,
definitely see where you're coming from, needing to get all of that organized, especially year over year.
This is actually the first year that I have taught the same thing 2 years in a row. It's been so nice to be able to go back to what I taught last year and be able to say, "Oh, okay, I did it like this," or like, "I did this activity," and be able to just kind of shift it for this year. So that's been huge.
Well, I can imagine. I've just heard from other teachers that I've known here and there that like, teaching a new grade or a new subject or something is like such a big task each year. And so crazy that you've had to, like, this is just your first time teaching the
Yeah.
same content. I'm happy for you though.
Thank you. I'm happy for me as well. It's made a huge difference. I feel like every year it felt like my first year teaching all over again because I either like switched grades or subjects or languages or districts or you know what I mean? So
Right.
it's been nice.
On the school front and kid front, would you prefer a field trip with your kiddos or a pajama day in your classroom?
I love field trips, and I think there are several reasons for that. I think one of them is, like, not all of my students have the opportunity to get out and go places and see things and do things, do you know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
feel like having field trips is just an opportunity for them to be able to do that. We live so close to Washington, DC, and so we always try to get them into the city, like, down to the National Mall or down to the museums to really, like, give them those opportunities, especially when they live right here. I think also they just go a little stir crazy having them in the room, and so I think a pajama party would be so fun, but even, like, sometimes for different, like, holidays or celebrations, we'll turn on a movie, and they're just crazy, and they're because they're talking to their
Hmm.
friends, they're not sitting quietly, so I would always choose a field trip, I think, over pajama day.
Yeah, anytime I go into DC, because, for people who are not on the East Coast listening, Maryland, DC, Virginia are all like just so close together. I didn't realize that growing up out west until we moved here. And I was like, oh, you really like, you can live in Maryland, you can live in Virginia, and all still be
Mhm.
just so close. Anytime I go into DC, I just think how cool it is to have so many free museums and free resources for all of the school kids who are in the general area. So I can definitely see, especially in this area, like it being really cool to get out and see some of those things.
I feel like I was also surprised by that. They call it the DMV, right? Like DC,
Hmm.
Maryland, Virginia. And it's cool that a lot of them will offer programs for students anywhere in the DMV. And so, like, I work in Maryland, I live in DC, but like we can still take advantage of a lot of what DC has to offer for students, which is awesome.
Yeah, definitely. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in the Salt Lake area. It's called Magna. So it's like just
Okay,
west of Salt Lake. Yeah.
gotcha. I don't know. I mean, I guess I do know that area. Obviously, like I went to school out there and everything too. But I just learned that there is a 7-Eleven in Ogden that has Fresca slushies. Anyway, I don't know why that really resonated with me, but now anytime I'm talking to someone in Utah, I'm like, okay, well, have you tried these Fresca slushies?
I didn't know that, and I have never been, like, a Coke slushy girl. I know that
Yeah,
some people, like, love the Coke Slurpee, but a Fresco one I could definitely get into, so maybe I'll have to find it next time I go home.
same. I haven't had like a true Slurpee for ages, and I was also never like a Coke one, but that just sounded really good the other day. Maybe it was
Yeah,
just a hot day out, and I was like, that would hit the spot. A little bit of crushed ice and some
absolutely.
aspartame.
Yes.
Well, I would love to know too. This is something that I ask everyone. What are you bringing into school in your work bag?
Good question. I always bring a laptop. This is kind of
Hmm.
funny because I have a school laptop, but I always bring my personal laptop just because you never know.
Yeah.
I always have beverages, so I always
Hmm.
have my water bottle, usually some electrolytes, maybe some, like, herbal tea. I usually am walking in with, like, a bag on its own just of beverages, and then I always make sure that I have, like, chapstick, sometimes deodorant. The heating and AC in my classroom is not always reliable, so, like, even this last week with warmer temps, we were up to, like, 78 degrees in my
Hmm.
classroom, so I guess I'm not bringing this in, but I usually have, like, some little chocolate stashed
Hmm.
around just in case, you know?
Love it. You need obviously laptop,
Mhm.
drinks, little bits of chocolate. Do you have like a little chocolate treat of choice?
Honestly, kind of just whatever, like, maybe
Okay.
whatever little Trader Joe's treat has called my name for the week or, you know,
A seasonal Trader Joe's something. I'm such a sucker for those. Um,
and they know that they can get us too. They know that they just switch it out and we'll come buy it.
they really do. They're geniuses. No, I love it. Okay, I'm also putting you on the spot a little bit here, but I am always curious what kind of deodorant people like love and gravitate towards.
So, I usually use Secret, just, like, whatever
Mhm.
24-hour. I think the one I have right now is probably, like, coconut
Yeah.
something scented. I've also used Dove. I went through, like, a, like, no aluminum phase where I tried to see
Yeah.
if worked, it didn't really work. I just got one at the store the other day. I can't remember the brand. It's like block letters. I wanna say it's like Thrive, but it's not Thrive, it's like something else. I don't know, it was a Target, and so I was like, "Well, we'll try it out." So, I feel like I'm
Definitely.
always trying to figure out what works best, you know?
No, same. So that's part of why I ask.
Yeah. I was gonna say, if you have any recs, send them my way.
No, I also was on like an aluminum free kick for a little while, and there's the blackberry and green tea native deodorant is I think one of the only like aluminum free ones that it's weird though because I've tried other native ones and I'm like those don't work, but I don't know if there's something weird in that little like scent combo that they put in, but like that one tends to work okay for me. But other than that, I'm like, you need the preservatives. Okay. Anyway, no, great to hear what's in your work bag and just a little bit about your day to day through that lens.
Mhm.
Talking about teaching now, tell me like a little bit about you when you were younger. Did you always think that teaching was in your future?
So, okay, my mom always, like, worked at the school, like, when I was in kindergarten,
Okay.
she was a substitute teacher, and then she was, like, the computer lady, and then she was, like, the lunch lady, and then when I was in 5th grade, she actually became a teacher, and she, like, went back to school, got her master's degree, and she started teaching, and so I would always, like, help her. Like, people would always be like, "Oh, do you want to be a teacher like your mom?" And I was always like, "Absolutely not. I put in so many hours in school, like, no, I don't wanna be a teacher like my mom." So once I got into probably high school, I had kind of decided I wanted to go into something in the medical field, like nursing
Okay.
or physical therapy or pediatrics, something like that. So when I started at college, I started kind of in that field. I had declared nursing and then I switched to exercise science, and I've just always been fascinated by the human body and how it works and nutrition and exercise. So that was kind of the route that I was on. I took a couple of years off from school to serve a mission for my church. When I came back to school, I was kind of in this head space of like, I need to figure out what I'm going to major in. And I was looking at a degree in the business school, a degree like an exercise science degree. And then I had started to consider teaching. And I actually felt really strongly pulled towards education. I started taking just a couple of like their prereq classes. I think it was probably like a child development course and like another
Hmm.
course. So I started pursuing an education degree. And as soon as I started going into classrooms for, they call it practicum, it's like kind of a baby student teaching where you'll go into a class a couple of times a week to like observe or help out. I just was like, yeah, this is really where I need to be. Like, I love being in the classroom. I love being with kids. So I finished up my degree and I became a teacher. And here
Yeah.
we are.
No, that is really interesting to see, like, you truly did start in a totally different place. I mean, nursing, exercise science to teaching,
Mhm.
especially, I mean, you've been teaching lately English language arts. I'm sure that you've cycled through different grades and subjects and everything. But yeah, those are two very different things. So it's funny how sometimes life just starts pulling you in a different direction. And I think that there is something really important to be said about like trusting some of those gut instincts that you have. And then trying some new classes. I love that they have the practicum element. So to be clear, the practicum is different than like student teaching, right? Would you consider it like almost mini student teaching before your actual student teaching?
We would have classes where you would go in maybe like once or twice a week. And then practicum was like for a month during a semester where you would go in every day and you had to do a practicum in a lower grades, like a K through 3, or
Okay.
maybe it was K through 2, and then a practicum in an upper grades, like 4 through 6. So I did both of those before I went into student teaching. And I really feel like that helped me. It gave me experience in both grade levels. I had kind of always thought I would be like a first grade teacher. I love the little kids. Like, I want to be a first grade teacher. And then coming out of my practicum, I was like, no way. Like, I will be an upper grades teacher or
Yeah.
bust. Like, I cannot do the little kids. So it was really cool to do that. And then I went into my student teaching, which I did in 5th grade.
Your degree was elementary education. Did
Mhm.
you ever do or try anything with like older middle school, high school kids, or is that just like totally separate?
So my degree is elementary education, which in Utah was K through 6. When I came out here, elementary ends in 5th grade. And so I have thought about like, I don't know, moving up. I love like the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. When I was in my master's program, I did like I don't know, kind of like an internship in a middle school. And I was working with like one of the support staff in the middle school. And I really do love that age. Like anything like 5th to 8th, it's just my favorite age of kids. So actually, recently I've been thinking about like bumping up to middle school. My degree would allow me to teach 6th grade. And if I want to do something else, I could like specialize and, take some more classes.
Yeah, that definitely sounds interesting. And
Yeah.
I'm like internally giggling a little bit because I feel like sixth through eighth grade were like some of my worst years, not just of school, but like in general. And for so many people, those middle school or junior high years are just like, they just feel awkward and cringeworthy. So I am loving that you're gravitating towards those. I mean, in different like volunteer capacities and things that I've had working with
Mhm.
kids that age, they are really, really sweet. And you do need good teachers and good people to help at such a pivotal transitional age. So that would be really cool.
My first year teaching, I taught 6th grade in an elementary school, and then now I'm in 5th grade. And it just I mean, exactly like you said, they are so awkward and they're trying to, like, figure out what jokes are funny or, like, what things they can say, and I feel like they really just need someone to love them and help them get out of elementary school and into middle school, and I love that.
I'm sure you can see all of their little like crushes developing and stuff too.
Mhm.
Adorable. Okay, so you mentioned too your master's degree. How long between finishing your undergrad did you start that program? Did you teach for a few years or did you just go straight into it?
Yeah, so I graduated from my undergrad in Utah in 2020, actually. So my student teaching was finished up online because COVID happened. It was kind of wild. And then I started teaching in the fall of 2020.
I'm sorry, I'm going to pause you real quick
No,
too.
you're
There's a test that you have to take too to
Yeah.
become licensed as a teacher, right? But I just wanted to like throw out like you can't just graduate from your degree and jump into teaching. Like you have to take a licensure test, right?
So true. Yeah. So it's called the Praxis. And as an elementary school teacher, I actually had to take the Praxis for English, math, social studies, and science
Ooh.
because I could be teaching any of that. I did a minor in teaching English to students of other languages, and I did a minor in dual language immersion for Spanish. So I also had to take the Spanish Praxis. And that all happened, yeah, like as I was finishing up in my student teaching.
That's a lot.
It's a lot, but I mean, it's worth it.
Is that something that you have to take like in different states too?
There is some reciprocity between states. So, for
Okay.
example, I was licensed in Utah, and then when I moved here to Maryland and started to teach, I was mostly able to just send them all of my like test scores and records and transcripts, and they just switched it over to a Maryland license. But I think other states, like you have to do a little bit more. Maybe you do have to take another test or something like that.
Yeah, I feel like that's pretty similar to a lot of industries. Like I know like the bar is similar where you can
Yeah.
be licensed to practice one state and that, other states will recognize that. Okay, cool. Sorry, I cut you off in the
No,
middle
you're
of
fine.
you finished your student teaching online because it was COVID. You took all of your millions of praxis tests
Yes.
and then it sounds like you started a new job.
So I started teaching fall of 2020. I taught 6th grade and I did that for 1 year. And in Utah, we were all in person. So like we had to wear
Okay.
masks at school, but we were able to teach in person, which I was so grateful for.
Yeah, especially your first year teaching, I can imagine that being really difficult to have like had all of this hands-on in classroom experience for the most part in your practicums and everything, and then immediately being thrust into, okay, I'm figuring all this out. I have to do it online now. So that is cool that you're able to do that with masks.
Yes, no, I was so grateful for that. And then after that first year, they actually were getting rid of the 6th grade at the school I was at and they were moving it to the middle school. And so they told me they were like, you can stay, but like you'll get whatever position. It might be kindergarten. And I was like, that's
Hmm.
okay. I'm good. So I found another teaching position. I switched districts. And I actually spent a year teaching dual language immersions. In Utah, the way that that works is we had two teachers, and one was the English teacher and one was the Spanish teacher. I was the Spanish teacher, and so I would teach science, social studies, math, and Spanish for half the day to one class. And then we would switch, and those kids would go to the English teacher, and I would teach the other class, like the same thing that I did in the morning.
So you were teaching in Spanish, like speaking
Mhm.
Spanish to your kids the whole day.
Yes,
Okay.
and I could actually only speak Spanish to the kids. So I was teaching 3rd grade, and all of these kids had started in dual immersion. Most of them had started in 1st grade, and it was challenging because I could speak Spanish to them, but they were only understanding a certain amount of that. Do you know what I mean? So it made connecting with the kids a lot harder than it was just in regular English because they couldn't understand a
Yeah.
lot of what I was saying and couldn't fully express themselves in Spanish. But it was still so fun. I think dual immersion is an incredible program. And so, anyways, I taught that for a year. And then it was during that year that I decided to go to graduate school. And as I was looking at different schools, I really found myself having my heart set on one school. So I applied to a couple different schools, but I told myself, like, if I get in, I'm going to go.
Yeah.
And I got in which was such a blessing. And so then I did graduate school in Nashville, Tennessee. So I up and moved after that school year and did my graduate program.
How long was your graduate program? What was your graduate program in?
My graduate program was 1 year and it was a master's of education. My focus was called Learning, Diversity, and Urban Studies. It was interesting because we didn't all come from an education background. We had people in there from like athletics, from the business world, interested in healthcare, all sorts of things. But we really talked about different factors that can impact education in urban settings. So things like poverty or racism or environmental factors, just so many different things. And so I did that for a year. And then I didn't think I was going to go back to teaching after my master's program. I
Okay.
wanted to find something different. I feel really passionate about education, but I think there's so many ways that that can look. But again, I just felt really strongly like I should look into teaching. And I decided I wanted to be somewhere that was a little more urban and a little more diverse than where I had been teaching in Utah. And so I kind of put out applications in a bunch of different places. I put some in Nashville. I put some applications out in Atlanta, in Richmond, and Washington, D.C., a few even in Salt Lake City. Anyways, ended up interviewing at my school here in D.C. and felt really good about it and ended up here.
Wow, I have so many questions just from that. First of all, what was it that drew you to the program and what did you like think you would be doing after?
I think initially what sparked my interest is being a teacher. There are so many inequities in education. I think both in the way that, like, in the opportunities and the access that students have to different programs and different things, but also in the way that students are treated within different educational settings. And so that really got me interested in, like, what does that look like to promote equity in an educational setting or to like work more towards, having more diversity in our schools and embracing that and helping all students feel seen, based on whatever their background is, whether that's like different cultures or they've, come from different countries or have different like family setups. Anyways, I started to feel really strongly about that based on some experiences I had while I was teaching my first 2 years.
Mhm.
And so when I started looking at graduate programs, I wanted to find something that focused on culture or diversity or equity. And I found this program and just felt really drawn towards it.
No, that is really cool. And then what you said you weren't didn't think you'd be teaching afterwards. Did you
Yeah.
have anything in mind?
I remember when I was finishing up grad school, somebody asked me, like, okay, what would your ideal job be? And I remember at that time, I just kept saying, like, so in schools, a lot of times we have coaches, like, we have a literacy coach or a math coach, you know what I mean? To
Yeah.
essentially help teachers improve their skills and like be there as a resource, as a guide in those subjects. And I always would say that like I would love to be a diversity coach in a school and really be there to help. A lot of the work that I focused on in my thesis in grad school was about teacher student relationships and how those relationships impact students not only in school but like on the rest of their life trajectory. Anyways, so I always said my dream job would be being a coach in a school to be a resource to help teachers in forming and nurturing meaningful relationships with their students. Specifically, so much of the teacher workforce are like white women. Do you know what I mean? So much of our student population is not that in the United States. Like we are so
Yeah.
diverse, which is so beautiful. And that's something I feel like my degree didn't really prepare me for was like how to relate to students who don't look like me or talk like me or have, the same foundational experiences that I do. I think a lot of teachers face that. That would be like my dream job is to just help teachers in that way.
I feel like as time goes on, like that is such an important aspect. I'm like tearing up a little bit hearing you say this. What a cool thing to be drawn to and what a like really interesting and impactful problem to solve. And I mean our education system certainly needs it. So no, that is really cool. It sounds like it definitely makes sense then that post grad school you were applying to places where there was perhaps more diversity, where you could have more of an impact there. How did you decide on like each of those places? Because those are big moves coming from the Mountain West to Tennessee.
So when I moved to Tennessee, my cousin and his wife were living there. And
Okay.
it was so helpful to just have somebody that I like knew and that loved me and I loved them and I could kind of rely on as I moved.
Yeah.
So I definitely was considering that, like, where are places where I will have somebody, you know? Atlanta, I didn't really have anybody there, but it was
Yeah.
close to Nashville. It's like a 4-hour drive. So I was like,
Okay.
okay, still be close to my cousins. I could go there. I had a cousin living in DC at the time that I was applying and a really good friend from when I lived in Utah. And so I knew that if I came to DC, I would like have someone, but also like just casting a wide net. I didn't know
Yeah.
like where it would stick or not, you know?
Yeah. No, that certainly makes sense. So looking for places that have diversity and also, I don't want to say like a safety net, but like kind of friendships or people that you can trust and rely on so that you're not like totally alone in this great big new city. So you interviewed and landed a job with this district in Maryland. And what did you start doing for them when you moved?
So, my first year here, I started as a fifth grade teacher and I taught the science, social studies, and health curriculum,
Okay.
which I loved. I loved that job. I loved that first year. It is so fun to be able to talk with kids. First of all, kids love science for the most part. So, they're always stoked about science class. But also, social studies and health for me were so fun. I've kind of mentioned I feel so passionate about like taking care of our bodies and what does that look like mentally and emotionally and physically. So it was really fun to be able to teach something that I loved. And then social studies was fun because in fifth grade, the curriculum is US history. So they start like with the founding of our nation and like Declaration of Independence and Constitution. And we move all the way through Civil War and westward expansion and into, you know, like more modern times. But it
Okay.
was just so fun to like teach students about history and make connections with what we're seeing in the world today. And I think kids are so intelligent and so smart. And to see them make those connections and also help them I don't know, just understand the importance of why do we even learn about history? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I really loved doing that.
And definitely cool to be teaching some of those in a place like DC or at least close
Mhm.
to DC where you could probably actually like go and visit a handful of those places here and there. And definitely cool to be able to see it, especially for younger kids who are maybe learning about this for the first time. It sounded like you did that for a year. And then where did you switch?
After that first year, both of the other teachers that were on my fifth grade team that year left the school. And my principal asked me to switch to English language arts. And I felt pretty torn about the move, but I knew that if I did switch, I would get to work with one of the other teachers in the school that I really liked. She would move up to fifth grade.
Okay.
Um, and I had a really cool conversation because I shared with my principal, you know, some of the things that I loved about teaching social studies. We just talked about how teaching kids to read is another form of promoting equity and educational spaces, and that, you know, reading is such an important skill. And especially since COVID, we see so many kids who are below reading level, and just how that's a way that we
Mm,
can provide opportunities to these students as they learn to read and as we like, you know, discuss important ideas in different like novels or passages or things. So, anyways, so after my first year at the school, I switched to English language arts in fifth grade, and that's where I've been the last 2 years.
okay. Are you still seeing a lot of kids that are below reading level for fifth grade?
I would say last year, more than half of our students were below reading level. And this year, it's probably between a third and a half of our students are below.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, that is a lot. And hopefully you're able to help bring that up. Um, Now, you're also your school that you're at is a Title I school. So you can probably explain what this means better, but essentially you're getting federal funding and some support to
Mhm,
help in areas that are underprivileged.
mhm. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Anything else that you would like add to that? How have you seen that being like different than some of your earlier teaching experience?
So basically, Title I schools, exactly like you said, we receive federal funding to help a lot of underprivileged students. And you have to have like a certain percentage of the students in your school who are below a certain SES level in order to receive that funding. I think working in a Title I school presents so many challenges. I
Yeah.
think working in any school at all, like every school has challenges, you know, teaching children. A Title I school, I think, has some unique challenges because when you have, you know, underprivileged students, that oftentimes means mom and dad are working multiple jobs, or mom or dad are working multiple jobs in order to really make ends meet. I think that really impacts the students. I think
Yeah.
sometimes we think kids go unawares, but they understand those hardships as well. And so I think it impacts them physically as much as it does emotionally. Something that I feel really strongly about is being able to recognize a student as a whole person and knowing that, like, they may not have enough food at home, or they may be bouncing around, like living with relatives because they don't have a stable home. But in addition to that, like they hear their adult talking on the phone, talking to family members and talking about challenges, and they like, see their parents working multiple jobs, or I don't know. So I think just recognizing that we need to be mindful of them physically, but also emotionally when they come into a learning space. And that when they present different behaviors or are struggling in certain subjects, like there are so many reasons that that could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that definitely is something challenging, but also so beautiful about working in a Title I school is being able to, like, I don't know, not only be a teacher to them, but be a support to them in so many ways.
Yeah, definitely. And probably really interesting and challenging in many ways to have so like a higher proportion of your students who are coming from some challenging circumstances because I don't know, it's one thing if there's like one or two students in your class, but when you have a certain percentage that are all there dealing with different things at different times, I could see as a teacher that being quite a challenge to kind of, well, first of all, have a connection where you're able to understand all of those needs that are happening and then also being able to teach and manage a classroom to all of those needs as well.
I mean, you've hit it right on the head. Like, there's so many aspects. It's not just going into a classroom and knowing the curriculum and teaching it, but being able to
Yeah.
like, manage all those other aspects as well. And I think that's something that really isn't talked about enough with teaching, you know what I mean? And like that makes the profession so challenging, but can also be so rewarding.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I'm curious, I could probably Google this, but what does a lot of the federal funding go to? Is that more so going to like teachers for classroom resources, or is that going to like lunch programs or before school or after school food programs, stuff like that?
I don't know specifically. I know some of the things that goes
Okay.
to our school is like they will use the funds to hire additional personnel if possible.
Hmm.
They'll be like, "Oh, we're going to use Title I money to hire another paraprofessional," or
Yeah.
something like that to have more support in the building. In addition to that, like we have different food programs. We're able to send kids home with food a couple times a month. Some different, yeah, after school, before school programs. So it can really vary. And I think there is like a specific, I don't know, like list of things that
Yeah.
schools can use Title I money for. So it might be different from school to school based on their needs.
Yeah, I would imagine so. But I can see that additional personnel really making a big difference, especially when you have so many needs going on in a classroom, whether that person is able to be more of in a counseling position or just able to like split it up so that you have smaller classroom sizes.
Yeah.
I can see that being very, very helpful when you have so many diverse needs happening. Do you feel like your master's program really helped prepare you to work in a Title I school?
I think my master's program, it was really so life-changing for me, and
Yeah.
I attribute that both to my professors, but especially to my cohort. I feel like I learned so much from the people that I was in school with and the things that we were reading and the discussions that we'd have, but I think it really just prepared me to be able to, like, consider different aspects and also, like, I don't know, just be able to interact with such a diverse population of students. But yeah, I would say it really helped me. I did teach in a Title I school before my master's program.
Okay.
I just feel like the longer I do it and post my grad program, I'm able to like do it better, you know?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Experience tends to help most things as long as you don't get too stuck in your ways. Have you had any moments or just like circumstances that have felt particularly rewarding in your teaching career?
I know, like me myself, I'm very much a relationships person. And
Hmm.
so I think for me, a lot of like, there is so much joy in seeing my kids learn and progress. But I also just find it so rewarding being able to make connections with students. And so I think over the years, I've just had several students. Even this year, I have a student who we definitely got off on the wrong foot at the beginning of the year. That has been such a hard relationship to like nurture with that student and
Hmm.
be able to like help him understand that I'm here to support him and that I just love him so much. And I feel like just the last couple weeks, we have really turned over a new leaf where he doesn't trust me 100%, but he's trusting me more than he was at the beginning of the year. And I think like that is such a win for me to be able to see him like growing and opening up and trusting not only me, but other adults. I don't know. I think, yes, like teaching is full of rewarding moments and
Yeah.
there's so many.
I hope that you do have students who kind of stay in touch here and there as they get
Mhm.
on. I feel like that's probably a little bit trickier when you're in an elementary school situation at the top of the levels because, yeah, fifth grade, they're going to move on, they're going to leave the school versus, if you're a sixth grade teacher, you might have some eighth graders that come back and visit you, but
Yes.
they can't visit you if you're at a different
Yeah.
school. Have you, any of your students ever like said or done anything that has stuck with you, either because it was really sweet or just like hilarious or totally out of pocket?
So many things. I'll share 2 things. So a couple of years ago, my hair was really long. It was probably down, like, past my waist,
Okay.
and, in May of that school year, I chopped my hair, and it was really short. It was probably up to my chin, and I
Wow.
remember I came back to school, and my students were like, "What did you do?" And I cut my hair, and they were like, "Why would you do that?" And I was like, "It's my hair because I wanted to." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they just could not get over that, and they, like, kept making comments about my hair, and so I told them, I was like, "Okay, you have 1 day to roast my hair." I said, "You can write whatever you want in your journal, and I will give you a chance to share it with the class, but you have 1 day to roast my hair, and then you have to be nice." And I remember these kids were just going off. They were like, "You look like Edna from The Incredibles." They were like, "You look like Wednesday Addams, but on a budget. You look" they just had so many things. "You look like Dora the Explorer." Like, it
Yeah.
was so funny, and it just was such a fun way to, like first of all, I mean, they're 10-year-olds, so, like, they can
Yeah.
say whatever about my hair, and that's fine, but it just was, like, a fun way to, like, let them be creative, but also it has just always stuck with me how invested they are in me and my life. They'll
Yeah.
be like, "Those are new shoes," or like, "You cut your hair," or like, "Why do you have a zit on your face?" You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
it's so funny. Another one that just stands out to me is my first year teaching, I was in 6th grade, and I always told my students, I said, "If you don't learn anything else in my class, I want you to remember just be a kind human." I would tell them that all the time.
Yeah.
And I had a couple of students at the end of that year that were like, "Miss Hauber, can we get your phone number and text you?" There are like some very clear cut boundaries to keep those students there. But I
Yeah.
told them, I was like, if your adult knows and they give you permission, yes, you can have my phone number. I was leaving the district, so I wasn't going to be a teacher there anymore.
Yeah.
Anyways, so a couple of them, their moms were like, "Yeah, that's fine." And so they got my phone numbers. And one of them texted me probably last year. So I taught him at this point like 5 years ago.
Okay.
And he texted me last year and he was like, "Hey, I was thinking of you, blah, blah, blah. This thing happened at school. And I just remembered what you always told us, be a kind human." And that was so just heartwarming for me for him to come back and be like, "Hey, like, I remember that you taught me this." And I literally told them, like, if you forget everything else that you learned with me in 6th grade, just remember to be a kind human. And that was really so meaningful to me.
What a special moment. I'm tearing up again. That is really cool. I think that sometimes kids have no filters and they will not hold back. But when you do get some of those tender moments, it just really hits you
Mhm.
somewhere deep in your chest. So, how special. Now, on the day today, I would love to know what a work day looks like for you. What time are you waking up? What does your morning look like? All the way through a school day and beyond.
So where I work right now, we're kind of unique in the district. It's quite a large district and they have schools on an early schedule and a late schedule. So my school operates on a late schedule that allows me a lot of time in the morning. So I love to try and get to the gym in the morning, and if that's the case, I'm up at like 5:30 or 6. If not, I'm up at 7. I'm out the door by like 7:45. I get to work around like 8:15. Our contract time is 8:40.
Okay.
So that which is really late. Like, so many schools have already started school at that
Yeah.
time, but our contract time is 8:40, and then we have those 30 minutes until 9:10 to use as, like, prep time. Once a week, I'll have a meeting with my team during that time, but usually that's just my time to get ready for the day, do some planning, get my classroom back in order. 9:10 is when students are allowed in the building, and they start to come in, and then 9:25 is when school starts. And then we go throughout our day. So our day is pretty fast paced because we're departmentalized. And so the students will switch. They have 3 blocks in their day, in addition to like a specials class, which is their PE or music or art or something like that.
Okay.
And in addition to an intervention period. Then they also have lunch and recess. So we really are just like running all day long.
What
IT.
is an intervention period?
Intervention period is where they get like specific reading intervention based on what they need. So in our fifth grade, some students are working on fluency. So like reading more smoothly and like accurately. Other students are working on reading comprehension. So being able to like talk about what they're reading and answer questions. Other students we have are like working on phonics. So still like
Okay.
what sounds does the letter A make kind of a thing. So
Yeah.
there's a huge variety and it's a time where they're split up into groups and we can give them more personalized instruction in small groups.
Do you have a lot of students at your school that English is their second language?
Most of them, their first language is either Spanish or Amharic, which
Mhm.
is the language that they speak in Ethiopia. Yeah, we have quite a few who are learning English as their second language.
Okay. No, definitely helpful to know what an intervention period was because that was not an experience that I had
Yeah.
at my elementary school.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah. Thanks for calling that out. I know sometimes it's like easy to assume that everybody knows what I'm talking about.
No, but that's really cool, and I think so, so important. My heart always goes out to kids who get, like, really lost or stuck behind because English is their second language, and they're not getting the help that they need to participate in school actively. I'm like, "These are smart kids. They're just not getting the resources that they need." So,
Mhm.
that's really cool.
Yes.
Anyway,
And it's great at our school because we have a specific teacher. She is our ELD teacher, so our English language development teacher.
okay.
And as a reading teacher, I work really closely with her to support those students in my class, to implement different strategies or techniques or activities to like help them access the material even when they're not fluently reading English. Yeah, shout out to Anna, my ELD teacher.
I pulled us off track there.
Yes.
I think it was a good sidetrack, but still would
Yes.
love to know, like so it sounds like you have, like, really fast-paced course time.
Yeah, so our kids start school at 9:25 and the order of our day goes they have their specials class, they have intervention, and then we do block 1 and block 2 and then they go to lunch and recess. So for me, my block 1 and block 2 are my regular reading classes, so I can teach the same thing twice in a row.
Okay.
And I have different students in each of those blocks. And then they go to lunch and recess and then they come back. And lunch and recess total is like an hour long. So
Okay.
that is time for me where I can eat, also get some work done. I often will have meetings during that time. So that's like my prep time. And then we have our third block of the day. And that for me is my advanced class. And so my curriculum and the activities I do in that class are a little bit different than the first two. And then the school day is over at 3:50 and I usually have students in my room waiting for their bus until about 4:10, which is my contract time. And then I'm probably usually at school till 4:30 or 5 and then I head home.
Are
Yeah.
you able to get most of your lesson planning done in the prep time that you have, or do you find yourself needing to spend evening hours grading papers and prepping your lessons for the next day?
I personally do a lot of work at home, which is
Okay.
something I'm trying to balance better. Yeah, I do often find myself grading or lesson planning or doing things at home after I've come home in the evening. Yeah, that's something I'm working to balance. And I think to an extent, the longer you teach or more familiar you are with the curriculum, like I know this year has been better balanced for me because, like I mentioned earlier, I'm teaching the same thing again. So I'm not learning the curriculum brand new this year, whereas last year I
Yeah.
was. When I have prep time at work, a lot of that ends up being spent with students, whether they're having friend drama or they need to call an adult or like somebody ran away from class or, like there could be any
Yeah.
number of things or we have to like call home because somebody got in a fight or did something. So a lot of my in school prep time ends up being responding to situations
Okay.
rather than like prepping for my teaching, if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense. And that was something that just in talking with a few teachers over the past few years, I learned and would never have really expected from teaching. And it makes me think that many teachers are vastly underpaid because they're doing all of their school time at school and then also additional work in the evening. I think sometimes teachers get this reputation of like, oh, they just work school hours and they get summers off, but there's so much more that goes into it, especially when you're learning the curriculum, you're
Yeah.
getting all of the assignments, you're giving attention to students in a way in which you're a teacher, you're a counselor, and there's just so much that goes into it. So I think teachers are really, really cool.
You're so kind, and I think that's so true. We joke that, like, you have to work so that we can go to work because there's no time to work while we're at work because we're working. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, anyways,
Yeah. So what does your evening then look like? If you're done at 5, you're probably home by hopefully 6.
I think it really depends. Something that I love about being in DC is it can be a very social place and there's always things to do. I know when it's winter for me, like as soon as it's dark or if I'm leaving work and it's dark, I'm like, "Oh, well, I guess I just have to go home and go to bed." Like
Mhm.
But now that the weather's getting nicer, I always try and like get outside or like go do something with friends. I joke with one of my best friends that there is time in the evening for two things. I can go to the gym and eat dinner, or I can make dinner and eat dinner, or I can like eat dinner and go see a friend. So
Mhm.
there's time, or I can like eat dinner and work, or I can go to the gym and work. But, like, you can't do all the things. So I feel like it
Yeah.
just depends. But yeah, sometimes working, sometimes being outside, sometimes catching up with friends.
I like the 2 thing rule. I might be adopting that from you as well. I'm adopting brain candy, I'm adopting the 2 things thing, and I also like that you made making dinner and eating dinner as, like, separate things because they are. You gotta schedule in some prep time for making food if that's happening, and that is a mistake that I too often make. Now, on the topic of, like, time off and what do you do with your summers?
So last summer, I actually ended up teaching summer school, which was really fun. It goes for about a month during the summer, and it was a fun way to get to know my students that I was going to be teaching this year. So I was teaching the rising fourth to fifth graders. So I always try and go home to visit my family during the summer. They're still all in Utah. So I try to make some good time for that. I love to try and spend outside time, whether that's like running, hiking, laying by the pool.
Yeah.
This summer, my family is planning a 2-week vacation together. Mom just turned 60 and my dad turned 60 this year. So this is kind of
Okay.
like our happy 60th to mom and dad. So I won't be teaching summer school. I will be going on vacation with my family and I'll probably try to like find another job to work for part of the summer, but I really do try to relax during the summer. I found last summer working summer school that I didn't feel like I took a break from school. And so
Yeah.
going back into the school year and starting was pretty exhausting because I just felt like I'd been teaching all year long.
Yeah, definitely. Now, when you are off on summers, do you have like an option to keep your salary consistent throughout the year, or is salary paid out like, during the time that you're teaching?
That really depends on the school district. I've
Okay.
been in districts where they will take your pay and spread it out over 12 months. The district I'm in right now, they pay you over 10 months, so I don't get paid
Okay.
during the summer. So we're working on our budgeting skills and really trying to like stretch that. But I also just will often try to pick something up so I still have income during the summer.
Yeah, it is nice to, always keep something coming in if you can.
Yes.
Well, it sounds like you have some lovely summer plans. Happy 60th to both of your parents this
Yeah,
summer.
thanks.
While it's not summer, is there anything else that you find yourself doing to unwind and have some time for you?
I think even just like we talked about earlier, reading has become such
Mm-hmm.
an escape for me. I won't sit and watch a show, but I will sit and read a book. And I have found that really helps me like decompress. I think also just being outside and like just surrounding myself with like a good support system. We joke because my roommate will work from home sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I will spend all day around people and I'll come home and just like, want to sit in silence. She'll spend all day at home and then like she'll be ready to like socialize. I mean, teaching can be so emotionally and physically draining. And
I'm
so
sure.
I think just finding ways to recharge in each of those ways for me has been really important.
Definitely. That sparked a really random question for me. What shoes are you usually wearing teaching? Because you're on your feet a lot.
Okay, I have found just some like normal sneakers that I'll wear, but I also am not opposed to wearing heels to school. Not like heels, but I'll wear like heeled boots or something I do love are platform shoes. I even have one just sitting right here, but like a shoe like this, it's like not a heel, so it's not hurting my foot, but it is kind of like elevated and fun. So in the warmer months, I'll wear a lot of sandals. In the winter, it's like boots or sneakers. I feel like my feet are pretty resilient, like they're pretty okay, and I'm used to being on my feet. It's interesting though, I'll notice when we have almost 2 weeks off for winter break, when I come
Mm-hmm.
back, I'm, like, exhausted. I,
Yeah.
like, can barely make it through a whole day, and I'm like, "Whoa."
You've like worked up your tolerance and then it goes away. Amazing. Well, I wish you the best over the summer that's coming up. Hopefully, your tolerance is still, decent after all of the summer activities that you're doing. Now, I did want to ask there's a lot of people who have the perception that teachers are not paid enough. I am curious. You've worked as a teacher in different parts of the country, you've worked as a
Mhm.
teacher with a master's degree, without a master's degree. How do salary opportunities vary based on years of the experience, where you're teaching, whether you have like a bachelor's or a master's degree?
There is a lot of variation, actually.
Okay.
It's interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of variation in different parts of the country. And I mean, so much of that has to do with cost of living, right? So
Sure. Higher cost of living areas, you're probably making more than like
mhm,
Utah.
exactly.
Okay.
There's a difference between having your bachelor's. A lot of places it's like bachelor's plus 30, a master's. They have kind of different levels.
Okay.
And then everywhere, you generally, for every year of teaching, your salary will go up a little bit. And then there's usually like a cost of living increase. So
Sure.
there is a lot of variation. I will say teachers do not get paid enough. Where I'm living now, I get paid significantly more than I did in Utah. And
Sure.
of course, like cost of living is different.
Yeah.
However, I don't get paid enough to live where I'm living. And so I think that's pretty tricky when it's like I'm getting paid more than I was before, but for where I have to live to teach where I'm teaching, it doesn't add up.
Yeah. Definitely.
So I would agree teachers do not get paid enough. I know so many teachers who work second or third jobs.
I would like to see presidential candidate in the next few years that runs on the platform of paying teachers more.
I
And
will be right there.
I feel like that's all I need. Like, I don't care what the rest of your politics are. Like, let's figure out how we can pay teachers more
You're so
across
sweet.
the country because it's such an important job and it has such an impact on students' lives. So I really appreciate you sharing all of your experiences teaching today. If someone is considering a career as a teacher, any advice that you'd give them?
I would say, from a teacher perspective, if you go into it for the right reasons. And granted, I
Hmm.
don't think most people are going into teaching because it's a lucrative profession or
Sure.
anything like that. But I also think, I don't know, give yourself grace, be kind to yourself, love the children, and remember that it's so easy to let children become a data point or a number. Like teaching is all about the children. So I would say focus on the kids.
No, that's really, really special. As you consider your life as a whole, what does success look like for you?
I think just like helping others and making a difference in the sphere of something that I feel passionate about. I think I've been mulling over in my own brain, like, what does it look like to progress from here? I love teaching, I love being with students, but I think that's not the only way that I can do what I love and feel like I'm making a difference. So I feel like for me, success is, yeah, making a difference in the lives of other people.
No, that is really, really special. And I wish you success wherever life takes you. And thank you again for joining me on the show today.
Nice to chat with you. Thanks for having me.
I guess this wraps us up for today. You can find us at the100jobsproject.com on Instagram. If you want to support the show, share this episode in your Instagram story. If you know a presidential candidate that will run on the platform to pay more teachers, I don't know, tell us so we can all write in at our next election. But thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next Wednesday.